I still subscribe to the very real possibility that Jar Jar could have been a Sith Lord.
There you go.
Oh, a Sith Lord. I love
He
that.
basically said he's the key to the entire movie. There was a number.
He is the one who called for the vote of no confidence, right? So there you go.
But like, have you seen where he basically the case gets made on Reddit and the number of hand waves that there were in episode 1, and like there's enough there.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Like it's the archetype of the curious guide, right? So like, Yoda looked like he was a complete fool until the reveal, right? Like, so there was, I still think that there was, based on what he said, some form of reveal for Jar Jar, and Sith Lord would have been one thing, would have been awesome.
0.5, the origin story of Jar Jar Binks. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the most important question is whether you think the machete cut is the right way.
It's the right way to introduce your kids to Star Wars. I would say it that way.
What is it?
So, yeah.
The machete cut. Are you familiar with the machete cut of Star Wars?
Oh yeah. Because that way they learn. When I started showing it to my kids in that way, you kind of learn where it's coming from, and honestly, it's a little bit more impactful. That holy cow, that guy turns into, or that's how Darth Vader was there.
4, 5, 1 through 3, and then back to 6.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Skip one. You
Is
skip
that
one
machete cut?
altogether.
So it's 4, 5, 1.
Yeah,
No, 4, 5,
it's like
2,
Luke, I'm
3.
your father. That's when you go
4
back.
4 or
and see how
5, but
that-
you don't finish 5. You go
Okay.
4 or 5, and in theory, you stop right like when they
You do it
are,
midway through 5.
Yeah, and then you go back, and then by the time he says, or you could either stop it right before he says, "I am your father," or "Luke, I am your father," being accurate, or you do it right after, and then you finish Empire.
Shit, that's hardcore to not finish.
Because then it goes.
Empire.
Then in theory you could, and I did introduce episode 1 to them then, because it's like, oh, it's a little kid. Why are we watching it? And then you bring them back on Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and then Return of the Jedi at the end.
And so I was genuinely interested. A Mandalorian movie. Do you think it's a good idea, bad idea? Excited about it? Not so
I mean,
excited?
they're pitching it the right way, right? Which is kind of like old school pulp action style movie. Even the titles on it and stuff like that make it seem like that's, if they pitch it like throwback action sci-fi movie and not so much the overthinking that was the last Star Wars movies. I think it'll be quite well. It'll be nice little.
What's this?
The Mandalorian and Grogu.
I mean,
I think it'll be good. I'm looking forward to it.
Filoni's running it, so I'm not worried. Kathleen Kennedy's apparently on the way out, and he's replacing her, is the rumor, which thank God. So we'll see. We're reading that apparently Favreau almost quit over having to take Grogu back into the storyline.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah, he was pissed. He's like,
Interesting.
we just did this dramatic thing where they said bye, and now you want me to just like insert him right back in? Like,
And I guess popular demand. People just loved him.
Yeah.
There we
I
go.
mean,
Yeah.
Grogu sells, man.
well,
Yeah.
man, I don't know. I think the Skywalker reveal at the end of that episode was just, man, the greatest
was pretty
moments in
wild.
television history.
I feel like we're going to run out of time and still be talking Star Wars.
And it'll be our highest rated episode ever.
we could do a whole episode on Star Wars, and it might be our most watched. But let's pivot in. So let's just get going. You guys are all comfortable? You're ready to go?
Yeah, ready to go. Yeah.
Welcome to AI for Advisors with Mark Heynen and James Cantwell. Every week, Mark and James break down the latest in the world of wealth tech and AI, and occasionally bring in guests to spice things up. This is not investment advice and not professionally produced. I am not real and not yet sentient. Now let's get on with the show.
Should we do our little guest intros and then get into?
Yeah, why don't we go do a little guest intro here and pivot into this? So here's a paradox that should make every American advisor listening uncomfortable. So Canada has 1/10 of the population and 1/10 of the wealth management market, but is beating the U.S. generally on AI adoption. So 82% of Canadian financial organizations have embedded AI apparently into their operations versus 71% globally. We can nitpick the numbers a little bit, but this is what I've been able to get so far. Canadian firms report higher ROI on AI investments in their global peers, 69% versus 61%. Here's where it gets interesting. Jason Pereira, one of Canada's most prolific fintech voices, has actually spent the last year documenting why most wealth tech implementations fail. And it's not actually the technology. So we're going to dig into that a little bit. And then Ken just raised $110 million to expand Conquest from 60% Canadian market share into the US, where he's discovering entirely different adoption patterns. And so we sort of have a bear and a bull on the show today from north of the border. And so it's going to be exciting to dig into that a little bit. And so, yeah, what's going well, what's not going well. So let's start with you, Jason. So you've interviewed over 400 fintech founders on your podcast. You teach financial planning at one of Canada's top business schools. You've won the Global Financial Planning Award 3 times, which is great. It's fantastic. And you recently went on the WealthTech podcast and said most WealthTech adoption broke this year. And you mentioned it's the humans, not the tech that's working. So I would love to hear a little bit about how you spend your time and what your thesis is going in. How are you thinking of sort of WealthTech adoption at this point?
Well, I kind of spend my time, eating my own, my own cooking here, because like effectively I am first and foremost a financial planner, and I'm a financial planner who every day tries to make his life a little less painful, and technology is the conduit for that. So basically, everything I'm talking about is either, in most cases, I end up being the guinea pig for testing a lot of this stuff. So when I talk about things like the people are the problem, it's always people been the problem. Like at the end of the day, people are not programmable automatons that are going to do exactly what you say in an organization. And furthermore, the organization doesn't necessarily figure out how to implement technology with people. So you have, we're imperfect beings basically implementing systems onto imperfect beings. So it's not surprising that these things fail. And I'll just quickly wrap that up by saying at the end of the day, I quoted that study about, I think it was MIT, 95% of all AI product spending amongst Fortune 500 companies had resulted in zero productivity gains. Well, yeah, give everybody ChatGPT and don't change the processes, the incentives, the structures, the training, any of that. What do you think happens? They go back to doing their old job, right? Because it's a distraction. Like without fundamentally rethinking how you do things and then structuring your company to support and encourage that and make sure people are held accountable to it, failure is the default.
And I guess I heard a read over the holidays, which is that, any early stage technology should have a 95% failure rate because it's early and people are trying things and they don't know how to use it. So I think that's another interesting way to think of that.
Well, I think that there's two ways to it. Look, the technology, I mean, anyone who ever used ChatGPT, especially in year one, knows the failure rate was pretty bloody substantial if you just went to fact check it. So there's a failure rate of the technology itself, but the failure rate of the implementation is different. That failure rate is a process design issue. Everything from a business process to an HR and training process. Even so the reality is, should those fail at 95%? I don't think so. Not if everything's working cohesively and if basically if I develop a new workflow that says, hey staff, the thing that took you an hour is now going to take you 5 minutes, input here, output here. By the way, you are now expected to use this every time. And I also then put in a system that A, makes sure they're using it every time, and B, basically rewards them for doing what they're told. Guess what? The success rate's likely to be higher.
How much of these failures do you think comes down to, and I'm going to kind of simplify it. You can always add like an option D in here. The failure of them to actually identify what it is they're trying to achieve, the technology selection process itself, or the implementation itself.
No, it's all of it. They're all unified, right? The implementation is just what comes out at the end of the spout, right? So again, Fortune 500 companies failing at this rate doesn't surprise me, because at the end of the day, what are they facing? Accountability in the public market is to say, what are you doing with AI? Like, what are you doing with it? You should do something with it. Ken's lived this, okay? Like the reality is every startup, even if they're not AI based, and there's no reason to apply Gen AI to what it is they're doing that I've dealt with. Every VC's, what are you doing about AI? What are you doing about AI? Because so the pressure to do something is there, right? If you're not, then what the heck are you doing, right? Then it becomes, okay, from on high, executives, we should take advantage of this wonderful thing because I'm told we can do these wonderful things, and I'm showing all these smoke show demos. Like, let's do these wonderful things. Hey, people, level down, here it is. And they're just like, but I can't just hand this stuff out. I've got to rethink everything. Like, the fastest way to do something is just to give it away, right? So like the reality is that what we're talking about is institutional change. And so James, the answer to your question is, unless it's well thought out, unless they truly understand what the end objective is, which basically means identifying the job to be done, understanding the job to be done, the process of the job to be done, and saying, how do we enable this process through technology that we understand exists, and then basically developing around that and then implementing, it's destined for failure.
Well, what's the saying? Garbage in, garbage out.
Basically,
right? That's what happens. I mean, that's
getting against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, we've been asked, and we looked at, like, and Conquest was founded very early on as we're going to build AI, and I say that because there's different types of AI, and the unfortunate part is nowadays you say AI and everyone jumps to large language model, but what we're seeing is kind of we built this on a large language model. Large language model do this. We'll do that or whatever. And it's like, okay, but what's the core value prop? What problem are you trying to solve, right? What is it actually calling? What is it talking to? That's my favorite. It's like, well, it doesn't actually answer that question, but it'll just go to the internet and get it. I'm like, cool, run that by a compliance team, see how that works. It's interesting. And so we took the stance to go that and to the other side of the coin in terms of why we get chosen is like, we're trying to solve a problem, which is we can leverage our technology and AI, and we can do these other things to make the mundane easier, to reduce the time it takes to do something, and to use the system to answer stuff that typically would take a human a little bit longer to answer than it normally does. Not to, dive in and say, the AI is going to do it all, because it's not possible.
Yeah. So Ken, you're building SAM, which is this AI assistant, and you're building estate planning modules. And we talked a bit about this at Advising, where you graciously agreed to be interviewed about this. What are you seeing in terms, as you're building this, what are you thinking in terms of adoption? What are you seeing? How are you sort of designing this to make sure that people have a good experience?
Yeah, no, good question. And you said 60, we're probably closer to 80% now. We had some good news coming out at the end of 2025, or we'll be at 80% very shortly. We're trying to basically, build a rock solid calculation engine at the core, right? So, and this is the important part, like being able to take the projection of cash flows to do the proper transactions that need to be done throughout the lifetime of a client, whether that's someone who's in the mass market or someone in the ultra high net worths doing estate. You have to, in our world, it has to be in such a way that if someone's going to base a suggestion or a recommendation or provide advice to a client, it better be auditable and better to be understood, right? Now, where a large language model comes in and kind of where Sam is like, how do we take all of these permutations and scenarios and all the things that could potentially happen in a person's lifetime and do it in a way that it makes it easy for everyone to understand and identifies the next best opportunity contextual to someone's situation. It does it in a way that's auditable, so we're not coming back with stuff that's made up. And we're doing it in a way that, like I said, cuts down the time it would normally take to do all these things. Like for someone like Jason, I always kind of look at this, and we used to joke about this, right? Like he's a darn good financial planner, right? And he could probably do pretty well with a rusty hammer, right? Like let's say he's a carpenter. He could probably do a pretty good job.
Fine, yeah,
if we're going to equate it, he could probably do spreadsheet. He can probably do a pretty good job with a spreadsheet. He could figure it out, but it's going to take him time to do all the formulas, all the calcs, whatever it is. And then you have to overlay the empathy, the client. You got to understand their situation, where they live, their kids, their taxes, all these things. And so if you're doing all that, less clients, less time to spend with them, more time punching in numbers and doing all this other stuff. What if you can cut all that down? What if you can cut all that noise out and then just use the system in the way that you want to use it, get the answers coming back. Maybe when the system goes, hey, have you thought of this? And do it in a way that in the end, just allows more time to work with more clients more efficiently and more effectively. So you give it to a great financial planner like Jason, you said it before, it makes your life easier. You give it to folks that are learning the profession. You give it to folks that are maybe not dealing with as complex cases as someone like Jason. You now have something that's allowing firms and folks who work for the firms to get advice to people at scale, much faster, much more effectively, and with a semblance of audibility, quality, consistency that wasn't there before. So that's that. So again, it was long-winded answer to your question, Mark, but that's kind of that was the genesis of SAM and we had built a tool before that was pure trial and error. It was Excel on wheels, right? Really, this is now to kind of go, we just want to make your life easier. We're not here to replace you. We're here to augment you. We're here to make things done. So anyways, long-winded answer, but that's kind of the way we think about why we built SAM, why it's an AI, why it's the first AI platform in Canada, not large language model, not Gen AI in case there's any compliance people looking at, but doing some of the things that help the user do things faster.
But one thing I want to, you hit upon it. What I feel, what annoys the hell out of me with LLMs, they sucked the oxygen out of the room, right? Like no one understands that other AI exists, even though it existed for years beforehand, right? So the reality is that when people, laser focus on like, oh, great, we're using an LLM for this. It's like, but, respectfully, I can put everything into Conquest and hit a button, and then the answer on a simple case is done in minutes. I'm not sure that there's utility to doing it 20% faster than Conquest can. Like there really is not, right? So too often, a lot of what's been thrown and a lot of what's coming out in the market that I see now is just like, oh, we're the LLM version of this. It's like, okay, that's nice. What did you do to reinvent the experience that's an order of magnitude better than what existed before? And it's like, you don't have to use two boxes. Like it's not a value proposition. It's not a value proposition.
My favorite is well, what if it doesn't know the answer to that complex tax calculation? Well, it will go to the internet. I'm like, okay, cool. So that's your advice is blending.
Have you prompted any of these on complex questions? Like, I'm sorry, it sounds incredibly confident. The number of times where I've asked something like that, a tax question, I get back, I'm like, yeah, that ain't right. I'm like, are you sure it's not about this? I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, it's totally about that. I'm like, if you were a human being, I'd be very mad right now.
Yeah, but that's a scary part to this stuff too, right? Like
Confidently
like
wrong.
yeah, it's confidently
Super
wrong. But in
confidently
this
wrong.
case, Jason knows that it's wrong. How many people don't know that it's wrong, right?
Well,
So again, if it's not auditability and traceable, and large language models should be used to make a meal out of the data, right? The data is all the recipe and all the food. Like my metaphors are going all over the place today, but the point is that it puts it together in a coherent piece. But the source of that data better be rock solid, right?
Well, it creates two assumptions. It creates the assumption that people know how to prompt it properly, let alone the fact it's going to get it right.
There you go.
Second thing it does is creates an immense amount of moral hazard, right? Because frankly, like I could take an output without proofing it, and there's a good chance it's going to be wrong, but I need to know enough to actually proof it. When I saw LMs the first time, I thought to myself, I'm not that threatened by this because frankly, like the person who can call BS to the LLM is more valuable now than ever before, right? Because like if everybody's going to rely on this thing that's supposed to know everything, the person who knows when it's wrong is more valuable.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Ken, you mentioned ability a couple of times. Like, how do you solve that problem? Like, what have you specifically done within SAM to solve that issue?
So we started with a realistic, holistic calculation engine for every market we serve. So we're Canada, the US, and the UK. It's validated by third parties. We have a rigorous testing program on it. We document all our assumptions, our calculation is understood, and we take all of the things, whether it's something as simple as investment projections to inflation to cash flow to decumulation planning, all of these things, and understand how all that works and documents. Because I mean, there's one way to do taxes, right? That everyone has to do it the same way. No one can. Some people figure out cheat codes, but you can't cheat taxes, and so to speak, right? It happens as part of it, as part of your financial plan. So that engine is rock solid. Now, with SAM, along with a few other parameters in the system, like who the client is, where they live, there's an element of planning preferences, an element of risk tolerance, there's an element of cost benefit, there's an element of just practical planning practices mixed with every single piece of financial data you can put into the system about them with a calculation and projection of the future. It's generating that list contextual to the user. And so to the household, right? So when a firm comes to us and goes, why did it do this instead of this? Again, the other thing too with SAM is it generating a list that we present to you as the user? It's not actually, like Jason said, there is a button that will create the draft of the plan, but the expectation, like with any AI, is the user's going to go, hey, is that actually correct? Or can I add a couple of different things? Or can I modify a few different things? I would say it is correct, but there's always opportunity to do more. Or if they're going through the list before they add, if they want to go one by one, they can I like that one. And then as soon as they add the first strategy, we re-rank, reprioritize, and rescore. So it's contextual compounding. And it comes back and says, I've run all the math. I've done everything. I've done the projections. I've calculated their estate tax. I've calculated their probate. I've done the decumulation. I've done it all. And I think this one would make sense. So you can still do it as a user. You can still go in and say, actually, you forgot the clients are getting inheritance. Sam, what's not going to predict an inheritance, but that is now something you can input and say, Sam, what can I do now knowing that my clients will get an inheritance? And it will come back with suggestions around that to build it in. So we've done it in that way. And so when an advisor using our system, using our tool to build a financial plan, takes it to a client, they can have the comfort and understanding that it is a validated and tested and third-party tested calculation engine, income tax calculation engine, decumulation engine that is correct from a deterministic perspective, at least in the initial build of the plan.
I'm going to add one more thing. It's a next best action engine, right? So this is something that advisors didn't have before, is because SAM stacks and ranks the different strategies based on impact, ease of implementation, and sentiment. The reality is it tells me what's next strategy that has the biggest amount of impact and then rescores it after I implement that. And when you think about it, was like before in trial and error planning, it was like, okay, I would go in and I would, fund this account, then I'd fund that account. And I have my kind of internal checklist for how I would do things. And I would go down the rabbit hole of doing them all. Well, two things. I would never know for sure if that was the best thing to do unless I, funded one account, took it out, funded the other account. Like you have to experiment, right? And this is basically telling me not just who wins that experiment, but it's also telling me relative to all these other strategies who wins that experiment. And the cool thing about this is that things I would have done before that I would have been like, oh, I'm going to make sure I defer this to whatever age, they may not even matter at all. like if I get the first 3 to 4 things done, they don't matter. So like if I have to have a conversation with a client about that other thing, like should I defer this? The honest truth is like, what do you want to do? Because it doesn't move the needle at all. And that's like insight that we didn't have before. Because again, if I have 10 options and 3 of them accomplish 98% of the heavy lifting, right? I don't know which 3 they are before I start. But Sam does fill that gap. So the next best action aspect has been, again, I also think the fewer things you ask a client to do, the more likely they are to happen. So
Yeah.
that's
That's a good point. And just to kick on Sam there too, like all it needs is really a birth date and income, and it can start looking for opportunities for the client, obviously the state or the province they live in. And so even for that, and we've started to roll out pretty significantly into the self-directed mass market space. And we're doing that because we want to get people who traditionally haven't had advice and understanding of what advice and what working with a planner could be. And then we identify, to Jason's point, possibilities contextual to their situations. Like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And so when they start sitting with their advisor getting closer to retirement, we have a government benefit optimizer, right? I didn't know I can delay my Social Security. I didn't know I can delay my CPP. And then more importantly, I didn't know that it was like, I shouldn't even be thinking about it until I did these 3 things before that popped up in the list of strategies as a priority item. And so that's where, like, when I see, I'm demoing, I'm showing the app and those things come up and everyone's like, oh, like I would not have normally thought to have that conversation at that point in time. We even started to put strategies in like, hey, they've been there since day one, but hey, did you know that your liabilities are now paid off? You have all this free and excess cash flow, right? Are you spending it? Are you saving it? Or what, as an advisor, the guidance to your client could be, we could have some opportunity here. Your mortgage is paid off. What are we going to do? Maybe it's a conversation about unlocking equity in their home. Maybe it's a conversation about using that cash flow to just top up their accounts prior to retirement. It's giving these and I like the way Jason said it. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to help identify, prioritize, give additional information, guide, and then for users, have that comfort that the numbers that it's coming back with the engine is to Mark's question, rock solid.
It's interesting. My summary of this is kind of like, it could just be almost AI in general, but thinking a lot more about financial planning. My summary of this is that, Jason described a method where you had to do a lot of trial and error and think things through and test these things out and see what the outcome is. And in those sort of scenarios, obviously, you're probably going to default to doing like, what are the most popular, what has worked in the past, right? And so you're probably going to have a bias towards doing like the same tests over and over, even if there's some variability from client to client. And now using these tools and Conquest specifically, you can really look at a far greater number of possibilities and strategies in probably less time, and then start to go through the process of testing them out, re-ranking them, etc., and determining what's the appropriate thing. So, I mean, that's kind of how I look at AI in general, is like it helps me weigh a lot more factors and considerations than I possibly could. I rarely trust the first answer it gives, right? Like it's almost never right on the first try. But when you think about it as a thought partner, somebody to riff with, right? Whether it's financial planning or a business idea or whatever it is, and you can continue to add context and about the topic that you're engaging with, I think that's when it becomes far more powerful. And that's when you get the good returns on it and not a 95%, failure rate.
Yeah. Well said.
I think a thought partner is a great way to call it. I mean, it can be. I also, as you probably heard in the previous one, my favorite term for it right now is the lazy intern. Incredibly bright.
Right. We have that in our show notes. I was going to bring up the lazy intern.
Absolutely.
Jason, have you employed or been a lazy intern in the past?
I have not been the lazy. I've been the bright intern. I haven't been the lazy one. Like, again, someone incredibly bright, but someone like a tool that's incredibly bright. But man, if it's not like a human being where if the human being gets tasked, like, let's contrast it to me, the intern. Okay. Let's just say that, right? You tell me to do X. But this little thing over here is curious, related to X. Should I explore that? Because maybe that relates to X. And then I come back and like, okay, I know you asked me for X, but I really think the job to be done was Y. And here is the thing that actually accomplishes that. You don't get that, right? And you also don't get it. You also don't get it checking against other sources. So I mean, like anyone who's ever used a bunch of LLMs knows the trick is you get an answer, and if you're not 100% sure, put in another LLM and ask it to fact check it, and it'll tell you the last one got it right. And by the time you've done it 3 or 4 times, you're usually bulletproof.
Pretty confident, yeah.
Like,
Fairly.
It's a lazy intern.
Yeah.
Well, to that, what were some surprises as you're rolling out, Sam? I don't know what stage you are in rolling it out, but what are some surprises in terms of how end users are using it.
Well,
That'd be really
so Core SAM is out there. So what I call Core SAM is that planning engine piece that we're talking about. That was there since day one. We had built in our previous lifetimes a trial and error planning software, the founders of Conquest. And so day one, we thought of SAM as this rank and prioritize and strategy engine that leverages the comprehensive calc engine comes back. So that's been there. We're extending SAM in another couple of areas right now. I know one Jason's going to get a kick of because we've talked about it, which I think is table stakes, but we'll get to that one. But there's a few things. So we built a system on a completely open framework. So, essentially we can allow for headless planning. So we've actually started to stand up MCP servers and allow people to connect into Conquest. I've been playing with Claude a ton, just basically using Claude to answer questions about plans or my set of plans and seeing what it comes back with. And it's so much fun.
You're one of the first WealthTech CEOs that has exposed their core app to it via an MCP endpoint, which I think is amazing. That's very forward-thinking of you.
Just to give an example, when we were playing around the first time and you were doing it for like basic recall, and you're like, oh, this is so cool, it's doing recall. I'm like, dude, let's go beyond recall. I'm like, tell it your daughter got into university and into this program. Like, oh, she just did. So goes like, and it went and got like, do we have enough saved up? And went and got like what the program costs were and compared it to the savings, said it wasn't enough and gave options within the plan and outside the plan for student loans and bursaries. And I'm like, boom, this is perfect. This is bringing the outside world within that's outside the confines of the planning software into the planning discussion. And that's exactly what's needed.
Yeah, 100%. It's fun. Like I sometimes when I demo it, I just said like after Jason and I were playing around with it, I was just like, anytime I go into any other demo now, I'm like, just ask me a question, I'll see what it comes back with. And it's in the context of Conquest, which is huge. We're also building a mini agent in Conquest called Ask Sam. I call it a mini agent because, right now it's only going to have access to within the context of your plan within the Conquest UI, be able to ask things. And this is always a tough thing to do no matter what in financial planning software is. What's the right audit report to bring up to have X conversation with my client? What's my EMTR for these clients in 2040, right? Like if you know where to go, you can get it no matter what you do in financial planning software. That's tough. So the agent, when you ask Sam, what we call it now, will literally bring that back in seconds. And so that's actually in UAT right now. We're just doing a UAT period because we want folks like Jason to see if they
Is it Ryan UAT yet?
I think, well, you're just going to get your, okay. So he will be testing it, but there's a few, we're starting to get feedback out of our advisory board and it has the knowledge base and things like that.
I'm sure we're going to get inbound on that. Who's allowed to be in your UAT group?
Right now it's users of Conquest. So we are basically doing the first UAT rollout with people that have a Conquest and kind of work through, but it's getting real users in multiple countries, the ability to kind of test it and see where it goes. And there's 4 use cases. There's knowledge base, plan summaries, so you can kind of use it to augment client reporting, navigational support. Where do I go to enter a defined benefit pension? And then there's key number value and reporting identification, and it will pop it up and show you. You can actually make edits to the plan too with it. So you could be like, where do I enter a salary for my client? Here, you do it on the set incomes page. Take me there. Cool. Do you want me to add a salary? Sure. Rather than you doing it yourself. So you can talk to it too. Like these are things that are helpful, table stake stuff that people are building whole companies around, which Jason and I get a kick of. The other one that's actually quite huge that we actually are probably going to roll it sooner than later because we've been testing it significantly is data migration via an LLM, which is taking unstructured data, call it PDF reports, account statements, CSV files, fact finders, and just saying, hey, LLM, can you put this in a Conquest? And holy cow, it does. It is super cool. So the question about how do I move from one tool to another, or my clients give me a shoebox of stuff, how do I add it? Or even a client at home engaging with a version of Conquest rolled out by a firm, load your stuff and put it in. And tongue in cheek, I was kind of like, again, these are the things that we've seen are rolling up as this is what we're going to build our company around. And that's where I go back to the point where it's like, you got to have the core value prop of what you're doing, which is we're building a solid engine. And these things are around to reduce stuff that the time it takes for people like Jason and other financial advisors that they're spending doing. We don't want you to spend the time. In fact, if you're barely in Conquest because we've helped you build a plan and loaded data and generated the right report and did all this stuff, and you did that quickly, and you're spending 7.5 hours or 8 hour a day with clients instead, but you were able to service X number of clients in those 30 minutes, we're happy.
Yeah, and I think like the thing is that you kind of hit upon there, like there is no moat to building a business that has a table stakes default use case for LLMs, right? Like everything you described there is like one of the straightforward use cases. I can go into Claude and I can basically upload, or ChatGPT, and upload it to PDF and get an extraction, like efficacy, hit or miss depending on what we're using. Like the reality is that you're using an LLM function where it adds value to an overall experience and job to be done, right? Not building the entire thing around, let's do an LLM version of X. You accomplished X in a productive way with the best tools that existed at the time, and you did a great job of it. But now you're layering on functionality by basically saying, okay, this is where it actually makes sense, not us going back and rebuilding the SAM recommendation engine, because there's no point to that. We're already like, there's no way to move the needle in that one.
Yeah. Jason, when someone says to you AI first, what does that make you feel? How do you feel about someone going, I'm building an AI first thing? What is that?
I try not to hard eye roll in front of them first, and then I say, what is the thing that the AI is going to do? And then it's like, why is that better than what happens now? And I will, my kids just gets a bunch of stuff, like a bunch of grief about this from certain players, but like he kind of says it. I'm going to say a little more bluntly. No one gives a damn if it's AI. I only care about me pushing the button if that button does the thing I want the button to do, right? Like, I don't care if it's a bunch of squirrels in the background, handing off nuts. I don't care. Like, no human being actually cares about what the technologists care, but the person doing the job doesn't care how the technology works. We just care that it works, right? So
I'll somewhat disagree with that. Really, just kind of playing devil's advocate. I won't name names. There was a quasi, SaaS professional services vendor in our space who was claiming things were being done by AI. This is a year and a half ago, and it turned out to be an outsourced team in India.
Well,
that does happen. Hello.
Well, I mean, okay. So
unless AI stood for actually India.
They do care about the job to be done, but they also care about things like the security aspects, and they agree to what was happening, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you tell me it's done with code, I'm good. Just like, let's make sure those security boxes are checked and everything else. But you tell me that it actually is a mechanical Turk, and there's a small guy hidden underneath the table moving the pieces. And anyone who doesn't know that reference, please go look it up.
Yeah.
Then we got an issue.
Well, here I'm gonna change directions a little bit, but first I just want to clarify something before I ask Ken my question. Ken, am I correct that Conquest is available to advisors and planners in the US, Canada, and UK?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other countries?
Not yet. I'll leave it like that.
All right. I like the smirk. I'll read into that. But where I'm going with this is you're one of very few that actually are handling financial planning in more than one country. Also one of the few coming out of Canada specifically, especially with such dominance. And so now that you've conquered the Canadian financial planning market, my question is, as far as US, Canada, and UK goes, what's really different in terms of either selling your product, or what's just different about the advisory space in these three different countries?
No, good question. The markets are a little bit different from a selling perspective. The first thing is yes, we are. I will just on the Canadian side of things. Yes, we have 60 and soon to be 80% of the Canadian advisor market, but that doesn't mean we're done, and it doesn't mean we're going to stop innovating. Like if there's a way to get 110%, we're going to get 110%. And what that means, and this comes up a lot. Like I sometimes get bugged because I have a little bit of activity, so to speak, when it comes to my roadmap and things like that. So I want to find, even though we have, I want more plans. So the other thing is we build based on plan or charge based on plans. But to your other question about how we go, so the markets are slightly different. I mean, obviously there's a lot more competition in the US. There's similarities. Obviously the scale in the US is much bigger. The firms are bigger. There's more opportunity, different ways people are looking at things. The grand scheme of things is that when we approach firms in the US compared to Canada, we actually kind of do it in the same way, which is we're not necessarily coming in to say we want to replace one tool. We want to come in and say, have you thought about the possibility of an application that can service multiple channels and multiple wealth segments in your business, whether it's self-directed, lead gen, prospecting, all the way up to high net worth, and be able to take the very first day someone engages with your website and does a very simple, call it discovery insight plan in Conquest, and get it all the way up to ultra high net worth if they happen to uncover that type of thing. So we've been attacking enterprise first, both in Canada and the US. We are starting to go more down market to the mid-sized firms. We have desires to eventually go direct to advisor. between Canada and the US, there's similarities. So there's a little bit more compliance rigor. I would say CRM3 coming, it's going to start to get closer, and Canada is in the US, but in the grand scheme, well, to a degree. But there's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot of good use cases. And the good thing is there's a lot of, firms that, will sign global agreements on that are in both countries and stuff like that. So it works. The UK is a little bit different. The UK is kind of where Canada and the US were a few years ago when it comes to the delineation between, say, the move from kind of like everything's pension based. Everything's a little bit more strict there. There's something called the Financial Conduct Authority that is very, they want more guidance, not advice. It's a little bit of a difference there in the hands of consumers. But there's a lot of tight, like, what does it mean? Where does it go? And for a while, there was a shift where large banks over there would just stop giving advice. Everything went to what we call the independent financial advisor market. That's changing. So it's kind of a little bit catch up. We're offering a more diverse set of tooling in Conquest than what currently exists in the UK. So there's a little bit more education that goes on there. And then the buying cycles are a little bit longer over there. But in the grand scheme of things, when it comes down to it, and this is actually speaks to the architecture of Conquest, everything is foundational in terms of accumulation, decumulation, blended with government pensions and fixed income, and providing advice. And then there's slightly different ways that in that SAM engine that priorities and suggestions will rank because I'm in the UK versus I'm in the US versus I'm in Canada. And that's just based on the programs and opportunities and products they have. And so we kind of blend that all together when we approach each market.
But one of the cool things I think about the fact that you're multifaceted, like you're multi-jurisdictional. And this goes back to, I remember when I have CFPs on both sides of the border. When I did the CFA in level 3, they did it really from a planning standpoint. And they started from the tax, one of the tax module. I remember looking at the tax module and thinking like, they did it from a first principle standpoint. Like they didn't get into one country's tax code. They did it from like, these are the types of tax like systems that exist around the world, type of accounts that exist around the world, whatever. And I remember reading that, thinking to myself, okay, from a first principle standpoint, there's only so many tricks. So therefore it is possible to architect a system that theoretically can go into every jurisdiction as long as it, basically puts the rule sets in place for all of them. And then when I met you guys a couple of years later, I was like, oh, someone finally realized that too. But, as time evolves even further, when new things happen in one jurisdiction, they're often just copy paste ideas from another country with with a couple of rule tweaks. I mean, this happened in Canada, oh God, I want to say 15, 16 years ago with the introduction of our tax-free savings accounts, which are effectively Roth IRAs, right? So we didn't come up with something new. We took something that you had and brought it up there. And then you guys, did your 529A accounts or whatever the disabled blend accounts. And there was some copying of our registered disability savings plans. So like, but I'm sure, the guys are going to sit there and say, oh, that's new in the budget. Well, that's interesting because that's about 95% will be built in this country. So copy paste new rules, ready to go.
Well, and the smart is there's a couple countries I'm looking at and it's a similar thing. It's like, it might be a different name, but there's similarities, whether it's a US or UK or Canadian account type. It's actually there's themes on each other. So, but in the grand scheme of things, when it really comes down to it, when we pitch in each country too, it does come down to SAM in the end, which is we can help your firm, we can help your advisor, we can help your clients make better decisions and have better access to information that much faster and that much quicker. And a localized piece is just icing on the cake in the grand scheme of things, even though that's sometimes a lift to kind of put that into the engine, but it's icing on the cake, right? In terms of SAM is there to kind of be aware of your jurisdiction and help, suggest the next best thing contextual to that situation.
And do you see this dynamic of higher AI adoption within Canada versus, for example, your US prospects, this, 82% AI adoption number that headlining? Like, do you actually see that out there in real life or not really?
I want Jason to answer that first because I saw his look. I want him to do that.
Deep breath. Absolutely not at all. Okay. So let's table stakes this on a couple of things. We have fewer vendors. So we don't even have we don't even have all the, enough companies for me to eye roll at that basically are doing, things that could be done without LLMs, let alone good ones. Okay. Let alone good AI companies. They're not, we don't have the ecosystem you do in the US. The US has the biggest ecosystem of advisor technology by a long shot. Great. Secondly, the bank channel controlling 75% of distribution, insurance companies as well. You think they're not letting people play with this stuff? Are you kidding? So the answer is, You want to tell me that we're adopting it? I want to say, great. Like, I want to have a conversation with more than a half dozen people who actually know we're actually adopting it in any way, shape, or form. So no, we are usually behind you guys on stuff. We are equivalently behind here, and part of it is lack of tools that are applicable in this country, and part of it is just the nature of the industry in this country and the compliance systems that overlay it.
Well, RBC does make a lot of noise on using AI for what it's worth.
Yeah, I know. And I've spoken to Salesforce about what they mean by that, but continue.
Okay.
I'll just look, hey, congratulations, you're cross-selling more. I mean, like, that tech existed. Anyway, it is what it is.
Like there is from like call like a model risk and compliance perspective, like we've been pretty lucky regardless of Canada and the US when we kind of go in, because we can basically say when Sam comes back with these things, this is where it's coming from. So it Conquest was adopted pretty quickly, like in Canada because we started here, right? Like that's kind of our roots. It's happening in the US too in the same, like we're not getting bogged up going, AI. So like I think we're in a unique space that we're one of those definitions of AI that's not large language model, it's not Gen AI, it's not Pred AI, at least core SAM, the strategy engine. So when we can back it up and say that this is here's what it's doing, and here's how the algorithm works, and here's how it's coming back with the data it has, and more importantly, the user still needs to decide to apply said strategy. That's helped us a lot, right? And so it's kind of like, why would I use trial and error when I got this thing that's basically giving me the answer key to back it up, and I can go spend more time here. So it's once we show it, we tend to that. And that is actually happening easier in the US and Canada. UK is a little bit behind because there's a little bit of like, but is that actually correct? Like, funny story, our strategy sometimes say save additional to this account type. In the UK, we had to change some of the language to say you could consider saving additional dollars to this account type. But that's just the nuance of kind of the guidance versus advice. You're educating and then applying the advice versus the other way around.
So, Jason, atypical for you, you had a strong opinion on something a minute ago about AI adoption. You lecture at a university, don't you?
Not anymore. I used to, but
okay. Well, I was going to ask. I don't know how long ago that was, but I was going to ask. Is there a generational divide here with AI adoption that you are seeing?
I don't have insight on that. Now, my wife is a teacher at grade 7, grade 8 level. So I do have a little bit of insight. And the answer is that, yeah, they're using it a lot. Detriment. There was a study that came out not that long ago that said that the greater the increased usage of artificial intelligence amongst children, the reduced amount of critical reasoning skills. So again, I go back to this as being a tool that has a moral hazard attached to it, in that great tool to thinking partner, getting work done, programming, jobs to be done into small agents and whatever, because you understand it, you know how to codify something. But the moral hazard aspect of this is that now the lack of understanding for what is actually happening by those who just take it as gospel, it's not helping.
It's why you got to show your work, right? Like that. Like I go back to the auditability of the engine. Like, so if you apply a SAM strategy and you really want to know how it was applied, there's audit reports that will show you how it was applied.
I will tell you, and this is not this is anecdotal, like sample sizes, like a sample size of conference. The most common question I get when I talk about the stuff I'm doing in AI is like, can you just tell me what to ask it? And I'm just like, right? Like, anyway, it is what it is. No, I'll then give some examples, but the idea is the mindset is just like, you should think to yourself is, can I do this here? Right. And then the answer is yes. Is it right? Okay, great. How do I standardize this? Like any other process.
And do you think Canada's gotten the governance side of this right? I think I remember you said you waited on royal assent on tax changes before rolling out some things, which I think is very different from move fast and break things. And so we're going through this process in the US of trying to figure out governance.
Do you mean figured out on the AI side of things, or?
Yeah, there's a couple of different elements of governance here, right? There's federal overview of AI rollout.
Yeah.
There's also just how you manage rollout of your tools, but you can take either of those.
The tooling is easy. I mean, like for us, like anytime there's a change in the like again, because we have the calculation engine, it's easy for us to kind of go in and, once things have been what we call get received royal assent or confirmed by Canada Revenue Agency, we can include them in the application. And if it's impactful enough, we might include like the ability to what if and model this thing that could happen so someone can look at it. Those are straightforward. That's just coding. And there's really one way to do that in a lot of cases, whether or not you agree with said tax change or not.
Right.
The stance on AI, I think, I mean, like anything, I think it's still evolving. I don't like in all the firms that we've dealt with and are having conversations with it, they're still learning and trying to understand the limitations of it. And so there's a lot of, we're not going to use this type of LLM, or we're not going to use AI at all, or we're going to only use AI for these functions. I think it'll change when people get a better handle on it. It's not super, it's as prevalent as it could be. Like definitely that my understanding and what I've seen, there's a lot of professions, a lot of firms that are just like, nope, you're not using it right now, at least not for the purposes of generating any content that goes to a client in any profession that you're in, without you putting your name against this. But I think it'll evolve and change and so on. I don't know. Jason might have a little bit more of a slightly different take on that.
Look, I like we have better privacy laws than you guys do, and I think by nature of the fact that large institutions are dominant, there's less privacy leakage. I think one of the things that makes me cringe is when I hear advisors in the U.S. putting personal identifiable information for their clients into open protocol. Just like, oh my God, please don't. So, like, from that standpoint, we have a greater awareness of privacy regulations in this country because we've imposed upon them. But as from a governance standpoint, I don't know that there's not much in the way of governance whatsoever.
Yeah,
Beyond.
because I think a big challenge here is the SEC being quiet on note takers. The SEC is coming out with certain rules related to AI with, basically making recommendations, but on other areas, they've been quiet, and it leaves a lot of ambiguity, right?
Look, I mean, the one thing I can say is that I helped, vet some AI related guidance from the equivalent of the CFP board in Canada that basically, was written in such a manner as to say basically like, you can't delegate authority to the AI. You are liable for everything that comes into it, and you are liable to understand what it does. So therefore, just you are never at any point not the professional in the room.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe we should pivot towards best of LinkedIn to bring this to a close. The one LinkedIn post that really jumped out recently, now this is from before we left for the new year, is this post about Nevis raising funds. Now, this is, I think, the largest fundraise
Seed
fundraise in a while. And so I'm just reading from Sequoia Capital's post here. I'm having trouble presenting it, James, so maybe you can show it on the screen. From Revolut alums to building the AI platform for wealth management with Nevis, Mark Swan, Philip Berta, and Ivan Shavalov on a mission to transform how financial advisors work, freeing up 80% of the time they spend on admin so they can spend it with clients. And so very specifically, I believe the amount raised was, I'm actually forgetting the exact amount now.
You're right. It was 40 or something like that.
It was a
40
5
million.
million seed round from Sequoia in 2024, and then they raised 35 million from Sequoia, Canuck, and Rivet Capital in this past fall/winter, right? So that's a fairly big seed round. And I guess, what's remarkable is this is a product that, we've all been through the conference circuit for a while. We've not heard of this product, So I think prior to the show, you guys were mentioning some dynamics about when mainstream Silicon Valley VCs get involved, things happen. So yeah, I would love your take on this.
Look, I will say it. The mainstream Silicon Valley does not have the greatest track record of hitting things out of the park in wealth management. In fact, they have very little exposure to it. I look at this and think to myself, like, I don't know what they do. So to their credit, maybe they have something wonderful I haven't seen. But frankly, like, I look at this and think, okay, 35 million on a seed. What the heck is your Series A going to be? And what are the milestones you have to hit? Because here's the thing about the only job of a VC-backed company is to hit your milestones to unlock the next round of funding. Otherwise, in 24 months, you are going to lose control of your company. That's it. That is basically it. So, like, the amount of revenue it's going to take to justify the next round? I would love to know and how they're going to accomplish this, right? And again, maybe they do. But I will also say that they're not the only player that's been invested on by a lot of traditional Silicon Valley companies. There's already one interesting story that had its own expose stories in the past about going sideways. You can look that up in itself. But and they actually haven't had that much success, quite honestly, or great success in the direct-to-consumer markets either, right? So you look at what happened with the robo-advisors. Bosch Brown wrote a wonderful piece on it's over. One, robos are not the winner. And it was about, the less than stellar IPO of Wealthfront, right? They built the company, but they did not knock out the advisor markets. I have no idea what these guys are working on, but I am highly skeptical of evaluation in our industry in this space. I mean, especially knowing roughly what, you guys have, what Ken here has raised and what they've accomplished and revenue wise. I just shrug my shoulders and say, well, let's see how this works out.
Yeah.
I mean, I have their website up, right? And it's meeting summary, table stakes, AI search, table stakes, automated task generation, table stakes, client ready emails, table stakes, smart meeting prep, same account opening, depends on how sophisticated it is. Could be a slight differentiator, but they're not alone.
No, I mean, like, how many note takers check most of these boxes already?
The first 5, all of them.
All of them, right? So you're going like, there better be some secret sauce I haven't seen here. I don't know what you're talking like. So I don't know what's happening here. Good luck to them. But again, I just think that, again, traditional VCs have not had the best understanding of this industry and have not shown that they've been able to deliver.
Yeah, I guess that's remarkable. Obviously, he was a Sequoia scout for a while. I think that's probably plays a role. I did hear through back channels that they had another idea and pivoted. I also heard through back channels that there was a fair amount of sort of paid market research happening on use cases, and that's how they narrowed down to those 6 use cases being the primary ones. So, it's interesting to see sort of validation that these are the things that people want. But the question always is, how much will people pay for that, and how big is that market? And I guess, also, is the market in the UK actually even there for this kind of thing, or are people generally slow in the UK to adopt AI because they're concerned about privacy?
It's a little slower, it seems. I mean, like I said, Sam's been relatively successful over there because it's like I said, we can show the auditability behind it. There are some good new startups and things like that are happening over there. I mean, obviously, like the US is dominates it all in terms of what's out there right now, just by the sheer number of fintechs that are starting up and different note takers and automated workflow firms and all these things that are coming up. But it's happening over there. There's a need, there's a demand. The thing that I liked about the UK and some of the conversations I've had is a lot of the firms that we've talked to, whether we're just getting lucky with the people, is just like there's so many little mundane things that our people are doing that are taking away from their actual job, and that's how they're approaching it. So our conversations have been good, and so they look at it as, how do we, again, I go back to my point, have people spending more time with people instead of more time in technology because they have to create an Excel formula or something silly like that. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So maybe we should close out with just some rapid fire questions. James, do you have one you want to throw in there, or I can go?
Sorry, I literally just muted myself because I started typing. So yeah, I do. So I'll give one for Jason. What's the most overhyped AI use case? I don't care if it's Canada or US, but most overhyped.
Most overhyped.
Is he allowed to say AI note taking?
I think we can all agree that's overhyped.
All right.
There's real value in AI note taking.
Yeah.
there's value.
Basically, I'll refer to this as effectively the use case is personalization at scale of marketing, because at the end of the day, you can advertise for anything in this industry. But the second that prospect bites on that and calls the firm, and that that advisor has no bloody idea what the heck they're supposed to do for that use case, it's over, right? At the end of the day, you can build content faster, you can build it better, you can do all this other stuff faster, not better. You can build it faster. You can put it out there faster. But if you don't have the ability to back up the brand promise you're creating through that marketing, no point.
So is it underhyped, the response to direct marketing, personalized direct marketing?
Was it overhyped or underhyped? One to hear.
Either, you can decide.
So that's the most overhyped aspect, is the personalization at scale for marketing purposes. You better have the human foundation done and ready, and the deliverables ready to basically live up to what you're advertising. Otherwise, you're just going to get, like, again, imagine how bad this can get. I'll turn an AI loose and advertise my firm in a million ways. And I get calls up about like, hey, I hear you do ESG investing on companies looking to go to Mars. I'm like, I'm picking out of nowhere. But you can imagine how sideways this could go, right? Like, I don't know, or like fisheries. I don't know anything about fisheries, but like it could produce that. It'd be like, I'm screwed. So overall, it needs to go back again to what is the job to be done? What is the fundamental focus? And then, yes, how can you empower that institute, that organization?
I like that. How about most underhyped?
At this stage, with the advisor community in general, vibe coding. And I'm going to be very cautious here. Okay. No, you're not going to build the one system to run your entire business on just by feeding Claude code instructions or Replit, whatever. That's insanity. Mission critical stuff, leave it alone. Don't try. Okay. But the number of times I said to myself, I wish I could test this thing, or I need to be able to create this report, but it needs to draw information from multiple places. And I can't do that in like Salesforce or wherever else. And I just go in and give it instructions. And then next thing you know, 20 minutes later, I've got a working version of the app and I can test the output. Like the number of small problems that you can, so I would say combination of vibe coding and an agent development even something as simple as building a Google gem. You can make your life so much easier in so many ways if you just start thinking about how do you get the AI to work for you.
I'm just gonna. I know it's rapid fire. We got to wrap it up, but I'm just gonna piggyback on that for anyone listening who's like, "Oh, I don't want to learn how to vibe code, or I don't want to do that." Like, Claude Code is not just for those who are coding. It is absolutely a useful tool for all sorts of very, like, I don't want to call it basic tasks, but data conversion, information synthesis, a whole host of different things, building a one-time use model for something, right? Probably stuff Conquest does natively, but like, it can be really useful for like a seriously broad range of tasks. And an entry version to that is Perplexity Labs if somebody wants to try
But I would
that.
say like go to Lovable or Replit, which are a little bit more user-friendly, like CD interfaces. It happens.
Yeah.
And the reality is that, again, I can't code, but I'm building my own apps. I say the gateway drug to this is how much work do you do in Excel, right? Like if you are like, I would solve this problem in Excel and I got to repeat this report all this time. Like you can build something more robust, more pretty, more dynamic by just giving it the instructions that you would have given the Excel document, right?
So Jason, as a surprise for you, we haven't talked about this yet. With what you're doing, I'm chomping at the bit to get you a Sandbyte UI or Sandbyte API that you can just do your own thing with.
I love that.
We'll take that out. I'll tell some micro journeys for Jason to build.
Good. I'm excited.
Yeah, so that's close.
Well, Ken, what about you? Underhyped, overhyped? What do you think?
I mean, I kind of would probably share the same as Jason, right? Like I haven't done a lot of vibe coding yet. I'm aware of it. Like we're actually approaching it from the perspective of, and I mentioned Sandbytes. The reason I mentioned Sandbytes and what we're doing is we're building the ability, like we have our entire system, as I mentioned, is built on completely open architecture APIs. We consume our API for everything. So there's a ton in there. And so we're starting to build the concept of micro journeys, which is one or more, or we have built, taking one or more SAM strategies or KPI requests, calcs, and so on, and allowing someone to basically go, I need to go answer that one question based on the data. So that can be available for firms looking to, or advisors looking to build their own little micro experiences, give a little tease to the financial plan. The beauty of it, unlike the history of calculators and things like that, is it actually is using the same data. It's actually using the same plan that you could eventually use to put that client who you've given a little teaser to into a fulsome financial plan without re-entering data or starting again. So if it's like, I just taught this client how to save where the best account type for them to save $500 using SAM based on, again, income, date, province, state, whatever it is. When that client comes back and goes, you know what, you were right. I put it into my TFSA, or I put it into my IRA, or I put it into my ISA if I'm in the US. This is the right thing to do. I'm ready to talk about retirement. Cool. We're starting with that already in the account and ready to go. So I think that's going to kind of come up pretty quickly. Overhyped, interesting. Like, I mean, I kind of look at it more broadly. Like I made the comment, like the comment I don't like is like when anyone says we're AI first or whatever it is. Like, I think it's that to me, that's hype. I'd rather be like, I built something to do X and it's powered. I'm leveraging AI as a way to, reduce the mundane, the workflow automation and so on. I'm not AI first that does X. It's I built this thing first and does AI. So there's a lot of hype around just I'm working in AI. I mean, I'll just look at it that way.
And final question on my end, and if you've ever watched our show before, you're going to recognize this question in a second. Ken, are you building a CRM?
No, we're not building a CRM. We'll connect to CRM.
Every note taker, don't you?
We'll connect to CRM. I believe in best in class and not spreading ourselves too thin. So what we'll do is, hey, vibe coding as well. Like some of these, the ability to kind of leverage AI to create integration adapters and connections to, whether it's something as big as Salesforce or some of the other smaller firms out there. That's the right answer. Us going to build a CRM or being the CRM wouldn't be in our core value prop.
Technology
I did
companies
talk to
listening.
someone today who's building a CRM.
Yeah. So CRM is the most disruptive of technologies because you're like, oh, it's just a bunch of databases. The long tail of functionality you need to support to do everything everybody wants, it just goes on forever.
Yep.
So
that's why.
You may think it's simple, but it never ends.
Yeah.
That's why every CRM has become a platform, just because they have to become a platform. So my rapid fire is just a quick prediction. In 2026, who will be more productive, Canadian or American advisors, and who will win the hockey Olympics?
Well, the Olympics, obvious. Don't even bother showing up. My prediction on productivity, I mean, if you've seen our productivity numbers, then you know you're going to win that battles. But we can still be happy about the hockey house.
And for that question specifically, like, we are building Conquest to make everyone as productive as they possibly can be. So I'll plug it in that way. If we can help you be more productive as an advisor and get more plans out there, that's why we're building everything we do. So I want everyone to have fun. The Olympics, so I want Canada to win, but everyone to, share the wealth and share the functionality and tools and get more plans and more advice in the hands of everybody. So I hope everybody wins in the productivity game.
Well, I just realized from my research that the U.S. only wins hockey against Canada with the men's team when it's on U.S. soil, which is pretty wild, right? It could feel.
I
was gonna see Jason leaning in.
It's between the Canadian hockey team and the American hockey team. When we beat the Russians, it's not a miracle.
Nice. Fantastic. Fantastic.
I think that's it. I think that's our closing note.
It. All right. Well, our next episode will be with John Connell from Focal, your friend, Jason. Thank you very much for spending the time talking to us. And I'm looking forward to what you guys build next.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity, guys.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Jason. Great chatting with you guys.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.